Okay, so welcome to OK Coders, another class. I'm going to real quick talk about the next few lessons so we get a sense of where we're going and the final bit of orientation that we have, because we've only got 3 weeks remaining. And then we're going to have a shorter bit of content for today's lesson. And then for the second half of class, we're going to actually do some class, and you're going to work together in groups or do some pair programming type stuff to get some practice with the concepts that we go over today, and then what we covered in the last couple of lessons as well. But we've got 3 weeks left to talk about data modeling, and so it'll be an introduction to data modeling into databases. And then next week, we are going to learn how to use MongoDB, which is the database that we're going to be employing in this class for our application, and start to integrate it into this blog that we've been building so far. Like actually start creating posts and storing posts and retrieving posts and showing them and so on. That'll be next week. The week after that, we'll probably get into integrating some forms on the web page, so actually doing the posting depending on how far we get next week. And then what I would like to do ultimately on the final week is learn how to do session management, which is tracking users and people being them, which is a whole separate bag of worms that is not achieved using any of the technologies we've learned about so far. So we need some special lesson for that. It's extremely practical. It's done very similarly across all systems, and it makes sense for a blog where you don't want random people posting to your page, right? So that's sort of the plan moving forward. 3 weeks left, so it's kind of crazy. Any questions about where we're at right now or anything that's coming up?
The Drupal meetup tomorrow.
Sweet. Where details?
Francis Tuttle, and I think it's 7 o'clock.
Okay, cool. So Drupal meetup tomorrow, Francis Tuttle, 7 o'clock. Any other events or anything going on, or shameless plugs that anybody wants to sort of put out there?
The Launch Oklahoma is having a happy hour this Friday.
On Friday, that's right. So I mentioned that last time and then couldn't make it myself. You probably need to RSVP for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it have a price? It was like a few bucks last time, wasn't it?
I don't know. I didn't really read the emails.
What is it called?
Launch Oklahoma. So it's the startup accelerator in Oklahoma City.
It was free last time.
It was free last time? Okay. So it's just like a mixer, right? Like hanging out where there drinks and stuff, or is it just social? Yeah, okay. So that'll probably be going on.
And I think all the food trucks were out there last time, so
right.
Bad to be in that area.
And is it at the 404 or is that Tech? It'll be on 404, which is Sheridan, just west of the Devon building. So just a few blocks west. But it looks like probably that guy right there, 718. Yeah.
That's a web development shop, right?
No, Launch Oklahoma is a startup accelerator. So they previously they would invest an amount in applicants, like maybe $10,000 to $30,000, and then guide them through a startup workshop program where they're teaching them customer development and customer acquisition and marketing, but then also developing a product. They would provide mentors and stuff. And I don't know if they're working on a smaller scale this time because they just lost the offices they were in. They used to be right next door to the 404. Now they're in the 404. But they're still doing the same thing. They're connecting people who have startup ideas with mentors and network connections and programmers and customer development type people and sort of showing them how to do that stuff. So. And that could be web or hardware or healthcare or bio or anything. Right? So, yeah, so cool. So Launch Oklahoma. Anything else going on? A couple of user groups? Yes?
So our intern, Shane, Tish, and Patrick will be presenting the projects they've been working on all summer long. The first Wednesday in August, so here at noon, and food will be provided.
Sweet. So that's the same day of our last class. So that afternoon, free food and presentations from the Tailwind interns. So, Tailwind, right? So not Penn League. Cool. Anything else?
And when is that?
It's
August 6th.
August 6th. August 6th, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the
What time?
noon.
Yep.
So, and that is the last day of our class. So an interesting sort of wrap up. OKCJS happened yesterday. Python probably's got something coming up, or did that just happen?
That happened.
It just happened. And then there's the MySQL or the SQL one. Isn't there? I don't remember when that one is. As always, you can sort of keep an eye out on the Made and OK page. That will keep you abreast of what's going on. So.
Ben Ventries is speaking at Code Norman.
Okay, so when is that?
Saturday at 3:30 at the Norman maybe. Meetup.
What's the name of it?
Code Norman.
So Code Norman Meetup, is it on meetup.com?
Yeah.
So meetup.com is this? Yeah, right. So and then I can presumably search for Code Norman within, let's say, 50 miles. There you go, Code Norman. And then Benjamin Ventries speaking at the Norman Public Library Saturday at 3:30. So.
There's Brett.
Yeah.
Man's in charge. Cool. Okay. So today, like I say, introduction to data modeling. Again, all of the lesson material is here at the OK Coders webpage. I will probably be relying on this much more so than, say, Sublime, because most of the material is not coding. Today it's going to be a little more theoretical. It will prepare us for working with the databases next week and integrating that into our application. So it's going to be a bit of lecture, and less on-screen, like here's how you do it. But this is important stuff. It's helpful to understand this sort of problem-solving process or the way that you go about modeling entities in the world so that your users can manipulate them in your application. We're going to balance that with some hands-on group activity towards the last part of class, because otherwise I'd just be droning the whole time. Okay, so what is data modeling? When I'm talking about data modeling, it's not really anything that crazy. It's the process of identifying the underlying data that your application needs to represent to a user. Typically, that data reflects some real thing or things that the user will eventually manipulate. And then modeling identifies the features of those things, so the things themselves, the features that are salient or important to your application's needs, and then the relationships between those things. And that's abstract, but we've got a number of concrete examples here. What you're looking to identify is the form that your data will have, not the data itself, but the form that it takes. Although, like this, the approach that we're going to emphasize is more emphasizing the form. Ultimately, you do use a database or some concrete, like, data storage implementation to store the actual data that you want. But before we get to that actual data, we need to understand what it even is that we're storing in there, right? That's a decision that we have to make for whatever application that we're building. And again, like, what's the process that you go about to accurately model the data that your user will manipulate in a product? So, for example, many applications have to represent people. So somehow there's like a person concept in my product. But the applications will model people differently. Clothing retailer might model a person with more aesthetic characteristics like age, height, weight, hair color, skin color, sex, eye color, and so on, so that it can make intelligent clothing recommendations based on that information. But a medical application, which also needs to model people, is not going to be interested in those kinds of data points. It's probably going to be more interested in stuff like medical history, family medical history, current conditions, current medication, allergies, and so on. They are both representing people, but the features or the attributes about people that are important depend on what the product does. And I emphasize that at the top. I sort of skipped that. That's important to understand and start with the needs of your users when you're modeling. So it's not like, well, this is the data that my application is going to use. You need to know what your application does first so that you understand what is important about the data that you need to be tracking in your application. There is a tendency, I think, especially with programmers, to just jump into programming and, like, start making stuff. But you need to understand what the point of your product is beforehand to some degree. We're going to find out that when we use the database for storing our information, the systems that we use impose limitations on the form that our data can have. And also enable some forms and disable some other ones. So, but again, we'll get to that towards the end of the lesson. There will be a little bit of an introduction to databases towards the end. I have a number of references that I recommend that you read. We're not going to have an explicit homework assignment. Continue working on the assignment that we had on Monday. Maybe you want, or just with some other exercises. So instead, what you should be doing is reading some of this stuff. And definitely, I would check out the data modeling Wikipedia page.